when is it right to be patient? When is this the right advice to give to a woman who's going through a difficult situation at home and who's being abused? And when is it enough for her to step out and her to act out and to speak to somebody about it?
I think the problem comes from not understanding the meaning of sabr. Sabr or patience. It doesn't mean that you became passive doing nothing. That's not sabr. Sabr, it doesn't mean you do nothing. Actually, sabr is an action that you do. So it means it is something required for me to do, some effort to put. So for example, yes, you'd be sabr. Let's say my husband is being emotionally abused or verbally abused, okay? Yes, I'm not going to quit or throw the towel from the first time, you know, but you know what? It doesn't mean patiently and you let him do that. No, I talk to him. We talk. We try to do counseling. We try to solve the problem. We try to work it together. You know, I speak up. I said, hey, I don't like to be treated this way. This is not the right way we talk to each other. This is not how it works with children, for example, whatever the case. So, and what that's sabr. Sabr doesn't mean you do nothing. And at one point when you try to do that, and you know what is not working, it's not against sabr to say, you know what, I think that should come to an end. I think, you know, this should be moved to, we should move on in our lives and it doesn't work this way. Or sabr, it means sometimes, you know, reach to a level, I give a chance, I try to work with the person, I try to adjust. Doesn't mean to accept the humiliation, accept the abuse. No, but deal with it and not to quit quickly. That's what sabr for me means.
And what about for yourself, Ustadha? I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important what Shaykh Waleed said, and it is a huge misconception. One of the other things I found interesting is when reading about how the scholars talk about sabr is sometimes an active word, like you said, and sometimes, you know, for example, the sabr, it requires sabr to consistently wake up for fajr every single day, and that's an action. It's not, I'm not doing nothing. In fact, I have to persevere. So I think that's probably what's missing in a lot of the understanding of sabr is the aspect of perseverance, right? It's that being able to continue to or basically having that forbearance and that perseverance to take action at when the action is required. So I think that's so important to mention that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard especially women being told, you know, have sabr, sister, have sabr, sister. And what is meant by that statement is, you know, be passive, don't do anything, you know, swallow the poison and keep a smile on your face. One woman said to her daughter that you have to be able to swallow poison and keep a smile on your face. And I think this is the main sort of toxic message that's being given to women, especially women, which is that they're supposed to put up with everything that's part of our religion, and a lot of times, of course, it's actually culture, but they you know, package it in religion and then say that, you know, you should be able to. They use really beautiful words, but to describe a very toxic action. You know, words like sacrifice, right? That's a big one that I hear. You know, oh, you know, this woman, she made a lot of sacrifices, and a lot of times women are spoken about in that way. You know, my grandmother, she sacrificed. My mother, she sacrificed. My aunt, she sacrificed.
Or
and what is meant?
Do it for the kids. Or do
yes,
it for the kids.
That's one of the biggest ones, right? Sacrifice for the kids. And what is usually meant by sacrifice in this context is they were really good at swallowing poison, right? They were really good at taking a lot of mistreatment and abuse, and they turned the other cheek. They swallowed it, and they didn't do anything. And this is made to be a positive thing when in fact it's extremely toxic. And I'm really glad you brought up the whole point of the kids, because this is a message I wish that I could literally scream from the highest mountain, which is that, you know, the vast majority of times when women stay in toxic homes or toxic relationships for the sake of the children suffer most. The children are actually the ones who end up suffering most. And when I say suffering, I mean psychological suffering, and I also mean spiritual suffering. There are cases where the children grow up and they actually want nothing to do with Islam because they blame Islam for their mother putting up with it. They say that, you know, my mother was praying and fasting and reading Quran, and yet she was miserable. So I don't even want to have anything to do with it. And these are true stories. So while our intention may be to protect our children, unfortunately, it does not protect our children to have them in those toxic environments. And unfortunately, they end up suffering later on in life, depression, suicidality. A lot of this increases in children who grow up in abusive homes, as well as their spirituality and their religion suffering as well.